Hi, welcome everyone. We are back again with our MRSI Wednesday webinar. We are in our 7th season and we are very excited for today's webinar. Next slide, sir. Today's topic is Impactful Research, award-winning research papers from ESOMAR 2024. In this webinar, we'll hear from some of the brightest minds in market research, the award-winning researchers of ESOMAR 2024. They will share the groundbreaking work and the impact it has made on our field. This is a wonderful opportunity to learn directly from experts and gain fresh insights that can inspire and educate us. Let us get ready for an exciting and insightful session. Next slide, Dish. Before we go into the webinar, a quick intro to the MRSI Wednesday webinar organizing panel. We have Amitabh Mishra, Head of Insights, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Sundar Muthuraman, Executive Vice President, Ipsos MMA, Mukul Gautam, ex-VP and Chief of Capacity Building, Purple Audacity, and myself, Shiva. I am a consumer behavior consultant at Curious Cat Consulting, and I will be your host for today's webinar. A quick note on MRSI. Market Research Society of India is a unique not-for-profit association for both providers and buyers of research and insights, and we aim to create awareness of the industry among general public at large as well as the government to establish and promote professional standards, especially the code of conduct. On this note, we would like to add that MRSI provides a free certification course on the code of conduct, and you can find it on our website mrsi.co.in. Would request you to kindly check it out. And MRSI provides a platform for market research to engage and showcase their work and collaborate on common issues. The MRSI Wednesday webinar is a key initiative to address these goals, and the webinar is conducted monthly once, typically on a 3rd or 4th Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Indian time. And being a December month, we have slightly preponed it to second week of the month. Next slide. And here are our esteemed speakers for the day. First, we have Shobha Prasad, founder director of Drshti Strategic Research Services. Shobha is an award-winning research and insight professional with more than 30 years of experience in research and advertising. Her core area of expertise are brand and positioning. She's a renowned speaker in Indian and international forums, and she was named among the Insight 250 Global Insights Industry Experts 2024. She's also a cartoonist and has authored a book titled Funny Business, Consumers, Corporates, and Other Cartoons. Welcome, Shobha. And the next speaker will be Ajay Bangia, Global Qualitative Leader, AA Solutions, Ipsos Understanding Unlimited. Ajay is a storyteller at heart, and he loves uncovering insights to solve wicked problems. At Ipsos, Ajay is at the forefront of blending technology with qualitative research. His recent endeavors focus on incorporating GenAI to elevate the qualitative research process, enhance the quality of outputs, and optimize efficiency. Ajay has 25 years of experience at leading research and advertising agencies such as Ipsos, Ogilvy, and Synovate. Welcome to the webinar, Ajay. And our third speaker will be Arundati Dandapani, founder and CEO of Generation 1 CA, which is a social enterprise and professional community association empowering immigrants across North America through data-driven insights, career pathways, and transformative networks. She is recognized as a global data and insights leader and as an advocate for ethical AI and sustainability. Arundati connects storytelling, innovation, and equity to drive inclusive growth and meaningful impact. She has won significant awards across North America and globally. Welcome, Arundati. Thank you all for being here today. Before we start the webinar, a request to the audience. Please share a question to the speaker in the question window provided. You can post the question to a specific speaker or to the panel at large, and the speakers will be happy to answer them in the final part of the webinar. Next slide. And I'm pleased to invite Shobha to share a paper titled Nothing to Fear But Fear Itself, which talks about the cultural insights as which help Mountain Dew to break away to a new narrative and lift the brand to a new level of growth, all this while retaining the current positioning. This paper won the ESOMAR Research Effectiveness Award 2024 Bronze at the ESOMAR Congress Athens. We're excited to hear from you, Shobha. Please take over.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on this. This particular paper I presented along with Ram, who was head of insights at PepsiCo, and I'll be taking you through what exactly we did, which helped us to, get a bronze on this. Okay, So this is a study where we took a very iconic brand, Mountain Dew, and we had a certain problem that we had to address. Now we all know, I think this is an Indian audience, so all of you are aware of Mountain Dew. You're aware of the positioning of Mountain Dew, that's Dar ke aage jeet hai. And the fact that it is built on courage, it's positioned on courage. And this has become a part of Indian pop culture. In fact, Dar ke aage jeet hai is something that you even hear in movies and scripts. So the idea that this whole ad was the series of ads was built on is the hero's journey. It's about a moment of fear that precedes success. It always showcases larger than life situations, larger than life celebrities, and that was what really guided this brand's success. And if we were to look at the kind of ads that were played, I know all of you must be familiar with these ads, but just to get a glimpse of it, this is the sort of canvas that we were looking at for Mountain Dew.
पर डर से
So there is
डरोगे
a
कुछ बड़ा कैसे करोगे
डर के आगे जीत है.
हिम्मत का घूंट लगा
So I'm not going to dwell on it, but I think this would have jogged everybody's memory as to what this brand really stood for. Now the problem thing is that this brand does really well in India, and the ambition was really to be the #1 CSD brand in India. But there was an issue. The issue is that there are two Indias. There is Bharat and there is India. Bharat being your representation of your rural upcountry youth, with whom this brand actually does extremely well. Okay, but there is another India, which is the urban India, where the brand actually does not do as well as it could. So the whole purpose was to see how we could grow the brand in urban India and what was really holding the brand back. So the kind of questions that were being asked at this stage. I'm sorry, is my slide moving?
No, Shobha, it seems like.
Okay, can you switch the slide for me? Yeah. So the idea to dial was to really dial up, connect with urban India. And the ask was to diagnose, what are the issues with the brand connect with urban India, and to identify what the growth levers could be with this brand. Could you move on? Move on, please. Next slide. Yeah. So the question really was whether urban India disconnected with the brand on very core cultural ideas. So since the brand was built on the concept of courage and fear and jeet, dar ke aage jeet hai, what was the disconnect really in the way that urban and rural India, or semi-urban India, upcountry India, was there a difference in the way that they really decoded these ideas? And that was really the question that was on our minds. Move on. So what we decided to do was we mounted a research. We decided to probe into these areas, the core values of the brand, which is around DER and the cultural aspects of the brand. And we decided to approach it in 4 layers. So layer 1 is the cultural decode. What is the youth culture in between urban and semi-urban or country India? What is the difference really in the broad culture of the youth, and what were their aspirations? How did they look at life? What did they want? That was a culture decode. The second layer of decode was fear, courage, and success. So what did these concepts really mean to them? How did it play out in their lives? And how do we, really interpret them in the context of, how they, the kind of stories they had, how they interpreted in the context of their own, realities. Then we looked at a third layer, which is how is the Mountain Dew equity decoded between urban and the semi-urban or more rural upcountry youth? What was the difference in the way that the equity was being seen? And finally, the communication. So what was the communication connect? So we looked at these 4 blocks and we decided to join the dots between these 4. So in terms of our methodology also, we had differential methodology. So for the layer 1 and layer 2, we had in-depth storytelling kind of sessions, which was preceded by, your, pre-tasks, which was around understanding fear, understanding stories in their lives, and also, the kind of youth that they were, what kind of values they had, what kind of aspirations they had. So we had a set of pre-tasks, plus we had sessions where they actually shared stories from their own lives. And this was very useful for us to really understand what dar, what jeet, what that moment of fear, what those moments of fear really were. Then we looked at, the due equity. For this, we did brand equity focus groups, and we did a communication connect. So these ideas were around understanding, in a very classic brand equity kind of a mold, look at, what the values of the brand are and how these people responded to the brand. And from the communication point of view, how these concepts of dar, fear, your courage, bravery really played out in terms of the communication and how they responded to that angle of the whole scenario. Can we move on? So there were some key insights that we got from this whole exercise. The first insight was that the concept of vulnerability and courage was something that was resonating right across. In fact, we found some important nuggets we found is that vulnerability, in fact, today is a part of the journey to success. And there was no shame in admitting that you feel vulnerable. And that was, part of the narrative of the youth, whether it was urban or rural. So this was one key reality that we found resonated across. So this was reassuring that the platform on which the whole concept of Mountain Dew was placed was still highly relevant, whether it was urban or rural. Move on. The second insight, and this was the interesting one, was that where the urbanites in particular were concerned, we found that fear comes in many sizes. There's no such that it's not just a one size fits all kind of fear. People talked about bade dar and chote dar. So there were small fears and there were big fears. And the small fears and big fears played out in their lives, in different in different zones. And the number of small fears that people had outweighed the number of really big fears. So, if you look at the kind of Mountain Dew ads that we had, which was, leaping off cliffs or, big adventure, plunge into the unknown. Definitely, it was part of their larger canvas of fear, but the small fears kind of took over. So many of them were linked with their aspirations and worry about not achieving aspirations, etc. Many such fears. So if you can see stage fear, exam fear, social rejection, phobias, interview anxiety, you name it, there were a lot of different fears. Can we move on? Now, the third thing is that when it came to the ad, while the fear positioning resonated, we found that the way it was executed did not resonate. So this seemed to be unrealistic. It was stunts done by, real heroes, and that really disconnected with them because it was about fears that were very distant from them. And therefore, this lack of, relevance, lack of, closeness to them created a distance with the brand as well. So therefore, the execution disconnected with the urbanites at this level. Can we move on? So the real task for urban India was to look at, the idea of fear and see whether we could broaden the fear canvas. Can we move away from the distant fears to fear that is near? And I think something that was, which resonated is that you could retain the core positioning, but broaden the canvas. Can we move on? So therefore, the strategy was to make fear relevant to all by bringing fear closer to all. So, we moved from aspiration to inspiration, from, stunts of, real heroes, everything that was larger than life and, far away, to something that was a little more closer to their everyday vulnerabilities. And today, we were faced with a generation which was happy about admitting vulnerability. So the number of vulnerabilities they perceived in their life was expanding, was quite a bit. Okay, and you may ask, what is the difference between how the urbanites and the, the more rural youth saw this? Why was there a disconnect? Surely even the rural youth had these sort of small fears. But what we realized is that a lot of these larger than life fears did resonate with the more upcountry youth who had bigger goals, and not that many small fears embedding their lives. So they kind of were able to look at it as a metaphor for the bigger aspirations that they had, moving from a smaller place to a bigger place, and many more such aspirations. Can we move on? So we moved from no fear is too big to the concept of no fear is too small. Move on. So therefore, I think if you look at the kind of ad, you'll see that we were able to use this.
वो नजर मिलाने का डर हो, खुद को आजमाने का, या आवाज उठाने का, वो हाँ कहने से पहले का डर हो, या ना कहने से पहले का। डर कोई स्मॉल, मीडियम, लार्ज या एक्सेल का मोहताज नहीं है। गला सबका सूखता है, सबका, पर डर से डरना नहीं है। हिम्मत का घूंट लगाना है, डर को निगल जाना है। छोटा घूंट, बड़ा घूंट, डजंट मैटर ब्रो। तू बस हिम्मत का घूंट लगा और डर को निगल जा, और दुनिया को दिखा तू किस मिट्टी का बना हुआ है। माउंटेन ड्यू। डर के आगे जीत है।
So you see, the beauty of this approach was that we were not moving away from the big fears. What we did was we widened the canvas. So you added a lot of all the different types of fear, which brought in the urban youth also into the canvas of fear, and therefore made it relevant to everybody. Can we move on? And this ad did extremely well for the client. So it had, of course, the kind of media used was creative. It was the way they used social media to bring people to share their fears and so on was quite a bit. This got 11 billion views. You can see there are a lot of big numbers out there. I think the important thing was that it moved the needle on sales. So this is all in terms of the ad effectiveness. Can we move on? This is the important part. It triggered a sales spike. So this was able to kickstart, and negate some of the issues that the brand possibly had in urban India. And both on the scores, the campaign metrics, intent to purchase, intent to recommend, all of that, plus the actual sales growth, real figures on people's Excel sheets. It worked well. Can we move on? And of course, it won a lot of awards. So I'm not going to take any credit for the awards, but the point is that it triggered, it genuinely inspired, I think, even the ad agency to produce a great series of ads and so on, which were award winning. Can we move on? So I think the point that we'd like to make, and the learning that we had, is that it is possible, when things are not going right in some parts of your market, it's possible to take the core, not dilute it, but expand the conversation. And also the fact that, sometimes you have to go dig deep into the values of a brand, into the cultural insight behind a brand. And that is what can ultimately trigger brand growth. And that was the biggest learning that we had through the study. Can we move on? And all I can say is, Dar ke aage jeet hai. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Shobha. Thank you for the insightful presentation. We often see that brands that are strong in urban market trying to expand into rural areas. However, your paper offered a fresh perspective, so it turned around. So a brand strong in rural market was looking to grow in urban market, and it achieved it without losing the core identity. And we have a lot of questions to you, but we'll come back to you at the end of the seminar. And the listeners, please do type in your questions in the question window. So just a reminder to you. Next slide. And now I welcome Ajay to share his paper titled Empathy or Empathy, which discusses the impact of AI on human connection in qualitative research. The paper won both the ESOMAR Best Qualitative Paper for Awards 2024 and the ESOMAR Congress Best Paper 2024 at the ESOMAR Congress Agents. And we are eager to know more about it. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you very much. So the paper was presented by myself along with my colleagues, Rollo and Jim. Both of them can't be here due to timing issues. So I will do my very best to try to channel my inner Rollo and Jim as I take you through the journey. Now I'll just wait for a tad to gain control of the slides. And if you can help me to move forward, that would be fabulous. Great. So if you take a look at the current, what's happening in the last couple of years, there's been a fair amount of conversation around generative AI, be it in every boardroom or in every water cooler conversation itself. What would be the impact of generative AI in the area of qualitative research? Some of us see this as a blessing that would free up researchers from those boring, mundane tasks, whilst others look at it as the death of the qualitative craft by itself. So we asked ourselves, what is the role of AI? Is it only for those monotonous tasks? Is the role of the human only to click on those recaptures? And what about the environment? What role does that play? The thought of a AI bot leading a focus group in the metaverse with synthetic respondents felt pretty much like a start of a far-fetched joke. Or is it actually closer to reality? Now, it was these type of questions that completely blew my mind. And I thought to myself, we need to keep our personal biases aside and take a look at how we can study this in a little more detail. That's where we put together 3 self-funded studies to all what designed to answer the question, does AI foster greater empathy or leave us feeling empty instead? Well, the first study was where we had an AI moderator bot instead of a human. This was conducted in the US, where we spoke to respondents about their OTT platform viewing habits. The second was where we had synthetic respondents instead of humans. This was a study that was conducted in Japan, where we spoke to women about their femcare needs. And the third was where we had 2 humans talking to each other in a virtual environment. This was conducted in the UK, and we spoke to people about their gaming habits. So what did we find? Well, what we realized is that as we went about this journey, we sort of looked at various ways to try to engage with respondents. In this case, we used the GPT-4 model to power our moderator bot. We used the voice functionality to conduct verbal interviews with a huge amount of prompt tuning to get the bot to moderate as such. And post that interview, we also spoke to the respondents with a short interview to try to understand their experience in terms of how they felt speaking to a bot. What we found was that post the initial technical difficulties, the AI moderator bot performed surprisingly well. It had the ability to reference specific details like television shows, episode titles, storylines, and this made the respondent feel very heard and validated, especially when you compare this against an untrained moderator. Now, this is what happened when I tried to use the bot myself. I love sci-fi that is positive, not dystopian universes. I love Star Trek and Star Wars, as you can tell from my t-shirt.
That's awesome, Ajay. Your passion for Star Trek and Star Wars really shines through. And it's great to hear that you're into the more optimistic side of sci-fi. I can only imagine how cool your t-shirt must be.
The fact that the bot knew the storyline of my favorite episode of Star Trek, Mirror Mirror, and the fact that it complimented me on my t-shirt made me smile. It made me feel really good. But wait a minute. Unlike a seasoned human moderator, what the bot did do was delve into my love for optimistic sci-fi. It acknowledged the emotion, but swiftly moved on to the next question. It sort of struggled with meaningful improvisation as well as real-time adaptation. It couldn't take a look at the human-like intuition to go off script, to smell out that insight, which is usually very important in terms of helping the client achieve their research objective. Now, this could lead to generic sort of responses. For example, the respondents told us about the fact that they looked at word of mouth when looking at social media, rather than, instead of, sorry, they looked at word of mouth and social media, rather than looking at the recommendations from the platform itself to figure out what's hot and what's not. But the bot didn't try to understand why that was the case or what could be done to tweak the experience. Experienced moderators have this wonderful ability to use phatic sounds, nods, ms, and ahs, and maintaining eye contact, where they signal the respondent that they want a deeper answer. This leverages an unwritten social contract where the respondents must elaborate further. Just like when you're talking to your friend and you hold your fist out, you invite a fist bump. Obviously, the bot couldn't do any of that. Now, what it basically does is behave very much like a novice moderator, someone that's constantly looking down at the discussion guide and loses focus of the prize that's right in front of it. Now, it's very clear that a AI moderator bot won't be replacing your favorite human moderator just as yet, but what exactly is it good for? But what it allows you is always on access. Imagine a scenario where you're speaking to respondents, talking to them about their pain moments, but a human moderator just isn't around to talk to a respondent at 3 a.m. and that just happens to be when they're going through the most horrific migraine that they've experienced before. Or let's take a look at conversational quantitative surveys, those follow-ups on those open-ended probes as such, or as an engagement tool used on communities, helping the respondent to feel acknowledged for the input and keep that conversation going. It's better than what you get today, but keep in mind, this is not exactly qual. Now let's take a look at our next experiment, which is that one in terms of virtual environments. This was a technology that had us enthralled before GenAI, but is completely eclipsed now. This is where we spoke to individuals about their gaming habits. And we had a set of 8 focus groups, a spectrum of responses ranging from face-to-face, online, desktop VR, to immersive VR. And what we found there was that this technology allows us extraordinary implications when it comes to engaging play within the individual. It's brilliant for any co-creation or and the environment is customizable. Currently, the tech is not user-friendly, but I'm sure as we progress, we would have GenAI tools in here as well. And this could completely change the way that we work with Qual for now. What this allows us to do is engage a set of individuals who perhaps didn't want to be part of research. Not everybody wants to be part of research. Not everybody can be part of research. For example, individuals who are differently abled. Now, a VR environment would allow them to share their experiences, share their point of view, which could be valuable in terms of unlocking growth opportunities for brands that are targeting the mass itself. These stories from the vibrant fringes could impact and benefit the mass in the middle. What this allows us to do is pretty much use the play mode within the individual. It unlocks creativity and imagination, which is great for Qual. But you have to be careful of the dynamic within these interactions. Now, here's our favorite respondent in the research. We've named, he's named himself Giraffe, and throughout the entire 2-hour-long conversation, he broke out his dance moves and jumped around a whole lot, and you need an experienced moderator to manage this. But keep in mind that he called himself Giraffe because you have the ability to maintain a sense of anonymity. Now, anonymity in this context is not an on and off switch. It's very much a spectrum The avatar that you have says something about you, but it allows you almost to look at a slow release of identity throughout the conversation. There is the real self, who I actually am, and the projected self, who I want to be, which I can then customize and expose to the world whilst maintaining my sense of anonymity. And there's often tension between these two, which could be a fertile area for a brand to capitalize on. The tension between my real self as well as my projected self. But that's not all. Here's our favorite respondent, Giraffe, coming back and speaking to us, but in a fetching mini skirt. And we went all Freud on him. Tell me how you felt. What does this have to do with your childhood? Tell me about your mother. And he said, well, I did because I could. It seemed like a whole lot of fun to do, so that's what I did. There wasn't anything deeper. What we realized that anonymity can help us to explore the lesser known fringes within ourselves as well. Coming down to our third experiment, this is where we sort of took a look at the aspect of synthetic respondents. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can take a look at synthetic data. There's generative adversarial networks, data imputation models. For this research, we sort of took a look at building a light version of a respondent bot as such. We took a look at an online community from Japan where we've got multiple members on it, and from the responses from that community, identified 146 respondents, used that data to train 146 bots. We then took a look at taking, we then exposed to these bots and humans a fresh set of questions and run a parallel test. These questions were in the area of exploration, ideation, and evaluation. And we could then see what the bot said versus what the human said. Now, we know that typically large language models are probability-based models as such, and so our hypothesis was that whilst we have unique data on 146 human counterparts that have trained these 146 bots, perhaps the data would skew towards the central tendency because it is a probabilistic model base, and that's exactly what we found. What we found was whilst the AI can replicate human responses to a degree, it lacked the color, the texture of a vibrant painting. It sort of moved towards the central tendency. Now, this could be great in terms of certain types of exercises, but when it comes to qual, the insight is often in the areas that aren't covered. It's that 15% which runs around the fringes, which is not heard of, which people haven't talked of before, which usually is fertile ground for looking at a brand insight and a brand platform. So whilst there is a consistency in the 85%, it's the extra bits that you're looking for. But we also realized that we consistently missed out on emotional nuances, that counterintuitive thinking and complex social factors. What humans did was generate a larger number of themes, a larger diversity to those themes as compared to their digital twins, both in terms of exploration as well as evaluation related tasks. But when it comes to ideation, the bot did pretty well. And we think it does even better if you pair it with a human. Now, what the bots could do is look at the ability to take a look at a diverse set of inspiration from various sources and put them together in unique combinations. And therefore, it helped to generate a large number of reasons to believe, which the humans perhaps could come up with just one or two such themes per individual. What we do realize is that you need to keep in mind a balance between functional and emotional dimensions when using AI for ideation-based tasks, and it's best done when you pair it with a human respondent as such. So what did we find from our 3 experiments? Our 3 experiments were put together to try to temper our enthusiasm and understand where does AI and VR hold a favor, what is the benefits for each of these, and with a method that involved evidence gathering and understanding. We realized that when it comes to aspects such as empathy, AI currently is lacking, and humans do much better. But it does a fabulous task in the context of ideation itself. Virtual environments, on the other hand, open up a sense of freedom, creativity, and wonder. But the tech is still a little clunky for it to be used in terms of mass appeal. However, we need to keep in mind that it's very easy to be astonished and deceived with regards to what AI can currently do. And here I mean generative AI. Well, it sounds very human, it sounds very convincing, and it reads very much like a genuine insight. But this is where we need to ask ourselves, are we being deceived by that astonishment? Are we being duped into thinking that just because it sounds real, it is real? We need to be cautious of simulating insight itself. What we also realize that when it comes to insight, insight comes not from the respondent answering the question, but from the moderator questioning those answers. The ability to improvise, to pick up on instinct is very important. And whilst the bot sounds like it's being empathetic, it doesn't have the ability to create new questions from those answers itself. And in that context, it's more like it's less like a qualitative conversation and more like conversational quant. But what this also needs to keep in mind is that you shouldn't be sacrificing the stories around the fringes. This is where insight lies. You shouldn't be looking at just the mass, and as you run the risk of vanillizing insight. And so, whilst our enthusiasm for AI and VR would continue, we would continue to keep experimenting. We need to celebrate that its potential, but also be grown up with regards to its application. And in that context, we think that AI and HI, human insight, is the way forward, at least for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you. We really like your digital avatar. Quite cute. Okay, a lot of learnings for us to keep in mind when adapting AI in qual research. We'll connect with you in the final part of the session with questions. Thank you. And a gentle reminder to audience, please do share your questions in the question window. Next slide. Okay. Our final paper for the day is Voicing the New Global Immigrant Realities, which explores the untapped potential of immigrant communities as a dynamic contributors to the global market and societies. This paper won the ESOMAR Best Paper of the Year 2024 award at ESOMAR, the Art and Science of Innovation Conference, Chicago. Welcome, Arundati. We look forward to hearing from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Siva, and thank you, everyone at MRSI. And it's such an exciting honor to be here, and thrilled to present today to talk about the new global immigrant realities. This was a paper that presented at the ESOMAR Art and Science of Innovation Conference in Chicago. Have been working on several versions of it, and at ESOMAR Congress I presented a version which looked at more the AI and synthetic lens. So it's nice to work with a seed story and see it be received so well. It's very humbling. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to actually also. Trying to move the slides, sorry. Oh. Okay, so sorry about that time lag, but I'm thrilled to actually be here today presenting actually in IST in Delhi, where I was I began my pre-immigrant journey, the stage of being, which you'll hear a little bit about as I draw from my research on immigrant journeys. But the goal for today is really to help you understand a bit about what North American what immigration means to North America, and how it's really a shape-shifting and disruptive force in 21st century North America and even globally, but how it has moved from being a very bipartisan positive issue to a bipartisan almost negative issue. It used to be a source of positivity and strength, to now it's also being seen as a challenge and a threat for many different reasons. And one reason that brands and institutions are still trying to get their head around in North America and elsewhere, where there are large immigrant groups, is to really understand how to meet this group, because they don't know too much about them. They're not one monolith group. They're very diverse. They come from all over. To understand what their unique cultures are, what their values are, what their aspirations are, and actually meet them and provide them with better brands and better quality services. So the goal for today is to help discuss the economic and social value of immigrants, to also understand how we can how we can practice cultural sensitivity and show cultural nuance when dealing with diverse multicultural immigrants, and also to drive immigrant inclusion industry-wide, as we're talking about setting new benchmarks and setting better ESG strategies and being more being well respected and actually setting the lead in this aspect as well, especially in areas where there are high immigrant populations. So my own North American story began back when I was 16 and I moved to the United States, to pursue different ambitions, and then relocated, looking around the world, gathered experience, gathered education, but finally taking another leap of faith and moving to Canada, where as an economic class immigrant, which is like 60% of Canada's immigrants, which so what is that category? It includes people like investors, entrepreneurs, startups, companies, skilled workers, and even international students. So here I am today, and here I was a few months ago presenting about some hardened immigrant realities that you don't understand until you live through the experience, and then you understand what's happening, looking at demographics, looking at the opportunities and the pain points that so immigrants are the fastest growing group in North America, Canada and USA, but brands and institutions are not able to keep up with the diversity and with the growth, with the rate at which they're growing, and we'll see more about why this is a problem and why they're overlooked. So there's many different underserved markets and groups, and ethnic minorities, sexual minorities, the indigenous peoples, undocumented workers, and immigrants are very diverse. And I'm just going to talk about immigrants because that was the focus of my paper, and they may intersect and overlap with other different identities and other different groups as well, but the focus of this is why immigrants are an underserved group and what is unique, what is it that sets this group apart, and what do the brands need to understand about them to penetrate this market better, to serve them better, and to meet them where they are in their journey to succeed as brands and institutions. There's a lot of diversity in Canada and US, North American melting pot of multiculturalism, and exactly actually a year ago, not exactly, over a year ago now, over a year and a half ago, I turned a naturalized citizen of Canada, which is great. I mean, I took my time, but when you took the oath, the citizenship oath, the citizenship judge said you are now equal to your Canadian counterparts, and that was a powerful trigger. It was really a reminder of something that okay, there's a previous status where you were not equal. So imagine being in a society where you're contributing, you have equal. You have great education, you have greater power, greater spending power, greater literacy, maybe better jobs, have greater intellectual and emotional stimuli than native-born populations, access to more languages, access to more networks and experiences. But yes, it's frustrating when you don't have equal access to empathy, and whether that means access to better quality services, better quality goods, or even better quality jobs sometimes. So what we're seeing in North America, in Canada and US, Canada is home to 15% of immigrant populations. around 16, and then it's pegged to grow up to 18% by 2050. In Canada, we're home to the world's fastest growing immigrant population. But if you took all of the world's immigrants together, that would be the size of the United States of America, and which is 4% of the global population. So what 4% of the global population are immigrants, that is. So we're the fastest growing group in Canada, also very highly educated, because driven by high literacy levels of immigrants, highest in the G7. So diversity in Canada is, the population growth in Canada was happening entirely due to immigration, and 98% of it. So there's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of similarities as well, given that Canada is also 1/10 the size of the population of the United States. Now, the top 3 racialized groups of immigrants in Canada are South Asian, Chinese, and Black immigrants, and by 2040, the Black immigrant groups are set to outpace the Chinese immigrant groups, and these are the source countries. Now, you can see that India, Philippines, China, Syria, and in the US, which brings in about 1 million immigrants a year, has about Mexico and Latin American countries are the top source of immigrants, and then there's followed by Mexico as India, China, Philippines, and so on. So when we look at the diversity of immigrants as multicultural citizens and consumers, there are differences and there are disparities across these groups. So there are some groups you'll find will be more educated than others, some more proficient in English than others, some have higher spending power, and some more homogenous than others. Yet we can't treat them as monoliths and have these monolith truths about how immigrants behave or how think or feel. In aggregate, the socioeconomic impact of immigrants to USA and Canada is tremendous and must not be overlooked, because when we overlook their significance to society, culture, and the economy, we are increasing their barriers to integration and inclusion. And if you look at race, we saw the racial breakup in the USA. We saw the top source countries. When we look to 2065, Asians are projected to be the largest immigrant group in the US by 2055, and by 2065, Asians will outpace Hispanic immigrant groups. But by 2065, also there will be no ethnic majority in the United States, which is going to make for an interesting situation, because all of the diversity in USA and Canada is rooted in immigration at some point, if not now, not in this generation, the previous generation. So it's important to remember what lies ahead. When looking at yes, we understand the demographic makeup. It's good to understand this, because it helps you track patterns, it helps you track source countries, it helps you understand the context that our immigrants are moving from. We need to also understand public opinion, because public opinion is key. It also shapes the experience of immigrants. How does the public feel, and public attitudes in the USA and Canada have been mixed. There's been positivity, there's been negativity. Is it a strength? Now, okay, 66% see it as a strength, but there's also that proportion, a quarter, which is not insignificant, that sees them as a burden. But regardless of which side of the political spectrum you fall on, which also it influences how you feel about immigrants, typically, 6 in 10 Americans see it as a top concern to be dealt with, and in Canada alone, 60% of Canadians think that there's too many immigrants in Canada, which has gone up. It was 44% the last year, and the year before that it was 27%. So where is all this public sentiment and this public attitude towards immigrants coming from? In just the last year, IRCC, which is the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship agency in Canada, they reported a 73% decrease in immigration applications in December, and that was the 3rd consecutive month of decline in such applications, immigration applications, that is. So this decrease, it suggested a growing trend, or a hesitation of people choosing the destinations like Canada, because factors like high living costs, unemployment, and public attitudes like this word of this travels far to the source countries, and people see themselves being blamed for, various housing, economic, social problems, which could discourage them further and which could bring down countries like Canada and US as top destinations to go to. So there's plenty of scope here for more pre-arrival research that brands and institutions need to actively engage in to bridge that gap, to bridge that gap and to eliminate some of the misinformation that could be created if and to help onboard some of these future immigrants better. But these are just some news stories you may have read, you may not have, but this is just some examples of what the stories that were floating in the news media around people's attitudes towards immigration and why they were being blamed for crises. I want to talk about international students because they're a significant driver of the economies both in US and Canada. They're economic powerhouses globally, but in Canada, the spending of international students, it outpaces the value of aircraft exports, auto parts, and heavy lumber, and that's $20 billion to the Canadian economy just from international students. In the US, which is 10 times the size of Canada, 6% of the entire higher education population are immigrants or international students, and they're contributing $40 billion to the US economy. So across North America and other industrialized nations, international students, they're seen as ideal immigrants. They're contributing so much. Economically, and if they're contributing so much, they are also should be seen as future citizens, and their voice is essential for shaping better services and smarter public services. Universities and colleges that know this well are doing this. They're setting up local offices in shores of the source countries to actually attract top talent and foster the next generation of innovators and leaders. So this is this particular category of underserved foreign students, which, so over half of them are not able to face job search challenges after graduation. 70% don't find employment in their field of study. And yet this group supports about over 200,000 jobs in Canada alone by way of student support services and other types of jobs that are created. And if you look at entrepreneurship stats, they are also incredibly high among foreign-born population students, especially as well, in terms of people launching companies here at both in Canada and US being higher among immigrant groups. But I wanted to mention this here. So what do we do? What do we do about this problem? What do we do about this integration problem, this feeling of being left behind, of being not included in the economy, of being seen as less than equal, having less access to empathy? What we do as Generation Y is to collaborate with trusted partners across sectors. We need to really go beyond public-private divide, actually engage community actors, community organizations, involve the third sector, advocacy groups as well. And through my partnering with your people framework, we really launched meaningful initiatives like career fairs, recurring career fairs and case competitions that deliver real impact. These sessions really attract a roster of public, private, beyond sectors and community actors to engage, to help empower and to connect these immigrant groups to grassroots opportunities and transformative professional outcomes for immigrants. And a lot of this group are international students as well. So through this as well, organizations including as you'll see Procter & Gamble, they were part of my presentation they were also had a booth, and they were also one of the several employers who supported our work in terms of these recurring career fairs and case competitions, and they're always happy to speak to the value of the work that we're doing through at these first points of contact. Education and other first points of contact for immigrants are financial services and healthcare, but this is one avenue that has proven to be successful for us. What we want to recommend is that work with trusted partner and communities, because the future is about preparation and preparing to meet these future newcomers, future citizens with better pre-arrival research, better understand their needs and aspirations before they arrive in the in the new countries, help them make informed decisions before they arrive, have this smoother onboarding process, but also dive deeper into the dynamics of consumer behavior. So understand concepts like consumer animosity, where there might be antagonism towards brands from specific countries, which influence their purchase habits, their choices, whether it be the war, Russia, Ukraine, whether it be China-Japanese relations, whether it be UK-India past colonial histories. It reflect on ethnocentrism as well, which is another concept where there's a preference for local brands within, for example, US or Canadian markets. So people prefer buying local, but also xenocentrism, where you have this fascination for all things West, like even moving to Canada or the US. So essentially, what we want to do is elevate the voices of immigrants, future citizens, and industry drivers by sharing their stories, celebrating their achievements publicly, and humanizing the data, which is blending ethic and emic measures that are both objective and emotional to create a comprehensive and empathetic understanding of this vital and culturally significant group. And happy to, as migration continues to shape the future of the West, it's time to unlock immigrant capital by understanding their stories, values, and impact, being more culturally nuanced, and actively including them in the economy so they prosper. Let's build smarter, more inclusive brands and institutions in this AI era and beyond, because the future will only get richer with movers and arrivals, and as we prepare to meet the population demands and labor market needs of truly global economies. And email me if you'd like to join the movement and grow the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arundati. Thank you. Sorry for rushing you the last. Okay. Thanks for highlighting the importance of connecting insights with action to equitable opportunities for the underserved migration population. And now it's time for questions, and hope all of you have your questions in the question window. Sandesh, the Q&A slide. Okay. So let's start with the questions. First question to Shobha. Shobha, one thing what we observed is the new campaign was resonating well with both urban and rural audiences. Is the gap between the aspirations and values of rural and urban youth reducing in the digitally connected India? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, increasingly it is. It's not like it's right now, converged as of now, but it's moving there. So I think over a matter of time, it's just a matter of time that, there'll be much more overlap, and then people will not have this problem anymore that, how do I make my communication connect with both? You won't have this issue so strong anymore, but yes.
Okay, we're running out of. So quick question to Ajay. Ajay, one thing what we observed in the presentation was we need to use AI as a complement to human intelligence, HI, in qualitative research. Are there any areas or thumb rules we should follow where to apply in qual and AI in qual, or where not to apply, especially? Yeah.
So that's a fabulous question, and the rule that I like to use is that I sort of take a look at prioritizing use cases or tasks in the context of frequency as well as error tolerance. So how many of such occurrences do I have, and how error tolerant are they? So if I mess up, is there a huge issue? And once you start to take a look at the quadrant of high frequency and high error tolerance, you can then look at a further set of components to it as such. How much time is this actually saving me if I use AI? Is it easy to verify if this is an error or not an error? And would a partially right answer also help me to add value? You'll then start to see that for certain types of use cases, it makes sense to use generative AI in the process. Whereas in other cases, it just seems like it's kind of pointless to do, and it doesn't really help so much. So I look at it as you always need to have the human in the lead rather than the loop, and think about what kind of use cases it would make sense. For me, it's usually those which are high in terms of frequency and high in terms of error tolerance to start off with.
Thanks for the quadrant. Actually, it'll be useful for us. Okay. Arundati, a question to you. Many of the underserved communities, including immigrants, are difficult to reach, and also they're not open enough to share their views. Are there any specific approaches or methodologies you adopt to engage with them effectively?
Yeah, these are great. Thank you so much for this question. Amazing. They are hard to reach. They have a lot of cognitive overload. Response burden is there. You need to meet them where they are in the communities that they feel most comfortable. Whether these are platforms, media platforms that are local media, in their own languages, in their own communities, in their own religious communities. But it could also be something like games that they're familiar with, and you catch them in the break between a kabaddi game or a jianzi game or a dance session. It's often there are several platforms and communities other than us. Generation Arundati, there's also immigrant nations, internations. There are different types of immigrant groups that you'll find both in Canada and US, and they formed their own, whether it's online communities, it's platforms, it's apps, Canoe, where you can reach out to them with different services and goods. So there's a lot of different ways to reach them, but there's also a lot of that. What I saw in the previous presentations is also leveraging that, not underestimating the power of fantasy and fiction in trying to reach them. The language in which people cuss the most is actually their home language. That's where you meet them. You meet them where they are in their most authentic state, and it's about finding those magic moments in terms of triggering what can trigger their authentic selves. We need to look at what the problem is and accordingly decide how you want to leverage the right insight to meet them.
Thanks. Arundati. Actually, we have run slightly over our time. Thank you, Shobha. Thank you, Ajay, and thank you, Arundati, for evaluating insights and time. And before we close, couple of quick announcements. Next slide. First, the updated version of the Indian Research and Insights Industry Report 2024 will be available soon on our website, mrsi.co.in. Please do download and read. And we'll be back next year with a new season of Wednesday webinar. Look forward to meeting all of you again with a similarly interesting and insightful webinars. And next slide, please. And wishing you all an advance Happy New Year. Thank you all for being a wonderful audience today. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much.